Oh, hello, everyone. It is Cate Stillman with the Yoga Healer Real Life Show, and I'm here with Rachel Peters are you RachelPetersYoga.com?
Yeah.
Of RachelPetersYoga.com. And we did a series last year on when to detox and how to detox and what detoxing is about. And I thought it would be fun for me to tell Rachel a bit about what's actually going on with the Simple Detox and to tell the whole community, because there's a lot of deep curiosity in this right now. And so I thought we could demystify all of that and dive into why we're doing what we're doing. So we're since 2002. So we got some lessons learned twice a year running Yogi Detox. And it was so interesting. Like, humans and attention have changed in the last 20 years. Believe that or not, Wow.
What?
Wasn't expecting that one. So people used to want to learn a lot about something, and now their attention is that they don't want to learn a lot about anything. They just want change now. And so how you help someone do that is really different. There's two different outcomes. And it started to get frustrating in the last year or so. It's like, oh, we have to do I could just feel it coming. Like, we have to do a massive overhaul of the whole, how we do this. And what I landed at was the Simple Detox. It has to be so simple that anyone coming in who was, we'll say, detox curious, more and more people talk about, I should do something like that. So could that person really experience a streamlined, almost effortless, because it's aided by the changing of the season? So you're just really falling into sync, because we have a developed global community of yogi detoxers who have a very strong momentum of this is what we do. There's a reason we do it together. It's way more fun. Mm-hmm. It's way easier, and you go in places you otherwise would not be able to access. And we all seem to be coming back because we like it.
It's time.
Yeah, here we go. Yes, and so there's a momentum that it can otherwise take a long time to build, right? And so for someone who can just step in the simplest and easiest way. And I was inspired by Mariko in our yoga health coaching community, who ran a 5-day hot water challenge after the new year. And I followed that on Facebook, and I was like, Mariko, how'd that go? She's like, it went great. And I'm like, that's what we're doing. We're just starting with hydration. Mm-hmm. And then we're, with hydration, less food, just, and then with more fat and less filler. And we'll keep doing the hot water. And we can add some spice, because hot water, it lubricates, and then the spice starts to turn the fire up. Mm-hmm. So as stuff starts to move in the tissue of the body that wants to exit, there's a little bit of fire ready to burn it up. So just really breaking down the simplest way to have an experiential understanding with the least amount of information. Even as I'm writing it, it's just keeping it so simple and easy to connect into the essence of. There's a spirit to it. That's really what it is. There's a spirit there's a spirit of detoxing, right? Do you want to speak to that? You know what I mean? It's you get in the spirit of something, and there's a spirit in surfing, right? It's just it's that, oh yeah, there's that. There's a spirit in different types of hard work, and mm-hmm. even a spirit to climbing a mountain, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a spirit to detoxing that it's so exquisite, and so many people have they're so addicted to what isn't working, unfortunately, that they can miss a whole experience in life.
Well, it makes me even think about, you and I spoke yesterday, and then you contacted me, but I wasn't available because I had dropped into like this spirit of my space.
Yeah.
Right? Of like, it wasn't as if I had a specific outcome that I knew needed to happen, but I needed to move around through my space and start to clear things out, and allowed myself to move where I needed to. And being next to my phone wasn't one of the things that was being required at the time, but I did it for probably 3 hours. I got into the flow to this point where it was like, oh, I just cleared a ton of stuff out of my house. And I've recently moved, so I don't even feel like I necessarily have all that much stuff, but it's interesting how it accumulates, right?
Yeah.
And it'd been kind of building over the last few weeks of like, there's definitely some inflammation.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. If we can look at it like with stuff around us, or like even sometimes even like with whatever mail coming in, UPS coming in, it's just like, there's just like this residual energy that has stuff. It's interesting because this happens in the body too, right? Where there's that kind of, and then it happens in the mind too, right? So you can have too much stuff, and it doesn't, this is to me, some of the fascinating thing about like, everything has to be digested. So too much of anything is a burden. And now with a burden over time, you have inefficiencies at first, and then you have breakdown.
Yeah.
Right. And that's all just like, why bother? I mean, why, if you don't have to do that?
Yeah.
So then the key seems to be high quality, low quantity. So it's like more fat, less filler. Like, it's just like that, right? Like just.
And to keep things super simple. I mean, that's also what I'm hearing from you too, in terms of like the simplification, because over 20 years of continuing to build out the Yogi Detox and expand it for this growing population, which has been great, but it's also added a level of complexity, which it seems like the simplification, it's like the less stuff I have.
Yeah. The higher quality, the stuff.
Higher quality, the experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's why the millennials like aren't into stuff, because they're just like, experiences. That's velocity of relationship as well. So when I look at velocity of relationship, which is like the speed in which, it's something, velocity is a different word than speed, but it's similar and it's the same and a lot of overlap, but it's like fascinating to tune into like what velocity is and what is the velocity of your relationship with yourself. Meaning like to me, it's like, how plastic are you with evolutionary identity evolution, something like that.
Like malleable plastic. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Plastic. How plastic are you with identity evolution? Yeah. Right. Of just like that not like stage to stage or level to level, but more of just like in that. I think what all the, it's basically what all the Enlightenment texts point to is it's like where there's not a locus of attention and like a fixed identity, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the simple part, and that's exactly like, actually I slacked Andy, cousin Andy, show mentioned yesterday. I'll be like, Andy, I mentioned you in the show. I'm like, remember when I slacked you the word complicator? Because I was like, there's got to be words for this. So I keep running into people that can complicate something. So I can give them something and they can make it more complicated than when I gave it to them, which is not the point of me giving it to them. Usually it's just like an execution thing of like, just get that done. But it's interesting because we run into this. And it's I was looking for the word. So I Googled something around it and I ended up in some Reddit forum and found out there's a word, a complicator. And this is what happens in the body. Like, so often people are like, what's a toxin? It's like, it's something, or like, where does it come from? It's like, well, when you take too much in through the mind, your ability to digest in your like just food actually decreases. Right. And so then your ability to absorb good nutrients and turn that into energy and bodily tissue, like there's inefficiencies in the system. You keep those up for like a long period of time, the stress is on the mind. Well, over time, there's a gunk or goo, or basically like nothing's digesting and absorbing or eliminating to the design. So it's not a design flaw. It's a user error. You ever get that? Like, is that like an old computer thing that would happen? Like user error, meaning like it's not our fault, it's yours.
Totally. Unplug and plug it back in.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's user error. And so what is undigested complicates the whole shebang. So when there's undigested food in the physiology, right, and it's like meaning the power of digestion isn't equal to the job, right? The fire's not up for it. It's like then you get this complicator. You get stuff which is decreasing the intelligence of the cells within the cells. You get it decreasing the intelligence on the surface of the cell membrane, and then you get it floating around in the intercellular fluid. And that's what in Ayurveda we call ama. It doesn't seem, I'm not sure I have to talk to Eric Grasser about like what exactly it is on some microscopic level now that we know of, like what is there any kind of equivalent of what that's being called now? Because there might be. And then how does that then become inflammation? And my figuring with this is that the inflammation comes because the body's like something's up. Like, let's go try to figure it out. And the problem with that is like, if you don't have to raise the guards, let them just guard the tower, right? They should go just guard the tower. But now they got to like go deal with internal affairs. And we all know what that's like. And then you're diverting attention and energy. And if you do that for too long, you get breakdowns in the system and you're less protected from the outside, and then you're more susceptible. And that's a big thing with inflammation is susceptibility. You're like systems now, you're not increasing your organism's intelligence. And to me, this really gets into like, yeah, we're trying to simplify this, but we're also trying to help people that were raised with a Western perspective of their body and of their mind and of their soul or spirit or essence or whatever you want to call it, that there's other ways of thinking about it that are they're holistic. So they take into account perspectives that come from the East that aren't matter based, but are essence based. So essence into matter, and that there's just a level of intelligence that's really fast and easy to get very good results from. Right. Where you just feel good. You feel interconnected and energized and in tune, in alignment, and then empowered and envisioned. Something like that.
I mean, how long are you planning for the simple detox?
It's the same. It's April 7th to, thanks for asking. April 7th to 28th. It's the 3 weeks. So the way I'm curious too, because the challenge, we did the challenge. And so there's the challengers now. We got hundreds of people in the challenge. It's like, I mean, you've been stirring the pot, right? And doing some of these wilder habits.
I have been stirring the pot. I've been doing long fasting sessions.
Oh yeah. You've lost 30 pounds in the last what? What did you tell me yesterday?
Probably a year.
What would you have thought a year ago?
About 30 pounds or about?
I don't know. Like what does like now say to her then? And before then, what does like her say to you now? Let's start with that one.
What does
she say? What does she say to you now?
Me now. She's got her arms up and she's just like, yeah, check you out.
Can she believe it or not really?
No.
She can't. No. Yeah. That's totally
No,
what I
she's
thought.
just like, what are you doing? Where are you?
Is she like, how the fuck did we do that?
Totally. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's how you, so that's velocity of relationship with self. That's velocity of relationship with self. So that's, yeah, that speaks to something that happens with detoxification, right? So why don't you talk about that? Like, why don't you just talk about what, yeah.
I remember it actually started, I think, when I was in Mexico for the immersion. I feel like that was where there was this thing that happened.
It was like the Yoga Healer.
It was
January event
in person, end of January 2020.
Yep.
And we did a bunch of work. We did a bunch of work around, like basically like planting your flag in the sand.
Oh,
and standing up for who you are and like putting your beacon of light out into the world to be attracted, like to have.
And doing that in a very specific way, like very, very, not general at all. And that's where I think a lot of people get tripped up, but like actually naming it. Like what do you value? Get clear on what you value. Yeah.
And more of the work of like getting out my own way. And then you hooked me up with your friend who's the osteopath,
Greg,
Ayurvedic.
Yeah, Greg Susi. Greg, that's Greg Susi, like second name mentioned on the podcast. I guess some people like contacted him after the last time we mentioned Greg Susi down here. And
I mean, I've had people contact me and say, "Who was the guy?
Who was the guy?"
You in touch with because
Greg Susi.
Yeah, I mean,
Soucy.
I mean, that was crazy. That was a crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy
let's talk about that too, because that's part of detoxing that I think a lot of people don't know about. Actually, it's been interesting talking with cousin Andy, who hasn't had the same kind of, I would say, life experiences in, the natural sort of healing world / like industry. Cause it's like a whole industry. And there's like people who get a lot of like body mechanical work, breath mechanical work. There's a lot of people that get, just like a lot of just different access points into education. And some people don't know have not had any of those experiences.
Yeah.
And so from there, it's hard to even know what other people know about how good someone can feel while aging. Right. And what I'm noticing more and more is like what detox seems to do for me consistently. And you guys, honestly, it's been a pain in the ass. I mean, totally. And you've heard me complain about it before, right? Where it's like, we still have to do this. And this is where my team was like, we're doing the yogi detox. I'm like, we're doing the simple detox. I'm not sure what the yogi detox is right now. I don't know what that is. It's too advanced. It's too advanced for all of us. Yeah. Like me too. I get it. Like it's wild what's happening with the human nervous system right now. Yeah. And so we need everyone's becoming complicators in their own life, whether they're doing that by adding 30 extra pounds or whether they're doing it by adding like fear-based inflammation that lays on scar tissue and in a pattern in the fascial body of just contraction, right? Yeah. Where it's just like the posture is contracted, the breath is contracted, the emotions are contracted, the thoughts are contracted, and it's disorganized and it's hard to break through. And in the process of detox over time, I mean, this is where we're like, what I want someone to learn in the simple detox is like, this is all you really need to know. This is all you really need to know. Just do it twice a year. Yeah. Something like that. Like, that's it. Like, how simple can it be to learn this? Yeah. Yeah. And you don't need anything. You don't need to go buy anything. You don't need, speak to that. I mean, you kind of touched on that before with space and minimalism. Yeah. Like there's this natural high quality, low quantity, and it's cellular. It's coming from cellular intelligence where the cells are too like, just let us be high quality, please. Like we don't need to be any bigger. And we definitely don't need to be worried about anything. Like, right. Thank you very much. Yeah. I mean, one of the cool things, one of the conversations Greg and I had last year, right, in that session that I had with him, was spend 24 hours, 1 day a week, drinking spiced tea and water. That's what kicked it off. So you
That's
had
what
body,
kicked- so that's-
you had body work. So
Yep.
you had like someone hands, like moving your energy in your body,
Yeah.
rearranging the furniture and getting things to flow. All of a sudden there's a shift in the mind. Plus you had done the workshop with me. So there's a big shift in the mind opening, big shift in velocity of relationships too. Cause who'd you connect with in the, so, I mean, this is the thing, right? People start with a detox here and then they end up in a course and they realize like they become networked into a community of people that are also growing fast. And so there's like that velocity of relationship of when you have a few core relationships that shift for the better. They're positive stressors. They're relationships that make you grow and be a better person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then stuff changes.
And I had been doing structural integration, basically a 10 series.
That's
right?
like Rolfing. So that's like another like body mechanic thing, you guys.
Prior to going to Mexico. And I basically continued to do that. But I think for me, like I even got a text message earlier today. This is funny. And I got a text message that says from somebody, it's just like, how do I fully, what did he say? Something like, let me just read it. Easy but thorough GI flush. I feel the urge to clean out top to bottom. And I wrote back, I was like, ha ha ha, you know? And then I was like, fast.
Yeah.
Right? Clear it out.
Yeah. So people are
give
afraid
things a rest. Give things a rest.
This is so fascinating. So Andy was like, people get triggered by, he didn't say it in these words at all. So, and I might totally be misrepresenting him. So we'll keep all that in mind. But it was something, but there was a validity to it, which was like, yeah, I knew exactly what he was talking about. And it's like people, certain percentage of the population gets triggered by fasting because they relate it to dieting. And so they're relating it to body image and being, I guess it's like the starving model. I think that's where it kind of goes, the starving model.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, it's kind of, but what's funny about it to me is like like at what risk? Like if more people explored hunger, because okay, we can talk about fasting or we can talk about hunger. I'd rather talk about hunger right now.
Yeah.
Can we talk about hunger?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of the same thing, right? It's like you don't get one without the other. So it's the same thing. Because if you don't get one without the other, then they're in a dual relationship with each other, which means you're now, if you get to basic duality, right, you can at least have a way of measuring, right, from the center to either of those sides. So what's the side of hunger? Because what we find for new detoxers year over year is like new detoxers come in, there's common things that they say, right? And one of the things that they say from the experience is like, I didn't realize I wasn't hungry before. Like I never really got hungry. And they're connecting the dot that it's not just hunger on a cellular level, that their cells are actually like have room to digest new matter to come in because they actually have some room. Like they have some room and they have some need to be like pushed stuff on. Otherwise it's just like stuffing closets with junk, right? So I'm hungry. And then because I'm hungry, I can kind of see some direction in my life. Like I can see where I want to go with more intentionality. Like the clouds are clearing. I can see I can make some, I can make maybe a bit of a goal. And then that goal, if I make that goal, it'll force me to make some certain decisions. And those certain decisions would make me grow. And then, part of that then growth, you want to be around other people that are growing, because then that's where you get velocity in your own growth. And that to me is where velocity of relationship, which is something, you guys, I'm going to be talking a lot more about. I think that's where that becomes, it's like once you have everything you want, what's most important is velocity of relationship. Of just like, because then you grow in an exponential way, and that's just really fun.
So hunger, when you're describing hunger, it's more of like getting clear around your desires. Like a clarity.
You can't have clarity. I'm arguing you
it.
cannot have clarity of if you don't have hunger, you can't have health. That's A, right? You don't get health. So what's health? Well, that's where it gets elegant and elaborate, because we're exquisite, because to the degrees that we can, I mean, you and I both have a background in tantric yoga, and there's a level of from Kashmir Shaivism, like from the intellectual side of it. And there's this, when you put that into practice, there's the experience of as you age, it just gets better. It just gets better. And it's a hockey stick growth curve, though. I mean, when I go back, I'm like, thank gosh I made it through the first decade. That was hard. I mean, BKS Iyengar yoga, first 10 years are donkey work. First 10 years are donkey work from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
Right? Not to scare the people on the Simple Detox at all. Because it doesn't have to be that way. And that's where velocity of relationship intersects with this. Because if you can get right with the right crowd on like the innovative cuff, that's what people are often like, so what do you do? I'm like, well, there's this thing called Ayurveda. And like, there's like, I'm an innovator in that area. It's kind of weird. Someone said to me last night, so what is it when you like hijack another culture and like monetize it?
Oh, like cultural appropriation?
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, totally. It's just that it's like, I'm good at it and I try to leave it better than I found it, Right. And like, I didn't choose it. I didn't choose to do this in the sense of like, this is what a smart girl would do, graduating from a good high school, going to a good college, and then graduate from a really good college and decide to, instead of going to law school or med school like her friends, decide to go into yoga and Ayurveda. Like, yeah. What? Are your what? So Rachel Peters, what is Ayurveda? It's my Tammy Simons voice. That sounds true. So what is Ayurveda?
I mean, to me, it's getting in right relationship with nature and the rhythms of nature, getting in I don't know, to me, I always see it as this way of being in the current, like letting nature actually lead.
Yeah.
So for example,
that is so hard. Like, how do you help someone understand? It's like, so like because our energy in general and culture is like very, like we're pushing to make something happen. Yeah. And so the need to allow to receive, and it's an Eastern thought. To me, that's like it's very Tao. It's very Zen. It's in India. It's in all that. It's like that, but it's not that much in the West with masculine, feminine.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep going. That's the thing, right? Like when you get to fall into rhythm, when you get to stop efforting, and that's what happens, right? And that's the joke in the intermittent fasting community, right? That's the joke. Like, I think it's Jason Fung. He's like one of the guys who loves talking about it, right? And he's like, it's not something you do. It's something you don't.
Yeah.
And because it's something you don't, space opens up. Like, you have more time. You have more money. You have more fun. You have more. More. You just got more from doing less.
Yeah. I think that to me, it's like this way of watching. I feel like one of the really great boons of being in relationship with nature is looking and watching how it is expressing itself through me. And that has given me a ton of freedom to be me.
Yeah.
And two, to recognize that there are ways in which I've been, I have habitual patterns that actually cloak that, right? That keep me from.
What do you say to the body empowerment? I'm just thinking this through as you're saying this and being totally rude and interrupting.
It's okay.
So I'm just envisioning you with 30 more pounds.
Yeah.
And what is the relationship because I have found to be really wild. And I have a number of stories that kind of back up the wildness of this, but exactly how refined the human body can be without filler. Like when there's no filler, and it's perfect by design, and that experience is exquisite. And that's the human technology. And how many people are experiencing that today? Because it's not something that changes with age, right? It's also designed to age well, like wine, right? Like certain things age well. A lot of medicines age well, including a wine as medicine or a draksha. But in any case, right? It's like, that's the whole thing. Like that's a different, and if one doesn't ever embark on the journey of detox, there's no way. I was going to swear there, but I held back.
Yeah. I mean, me with 30 pounds is like living really out of alignment. There were a lot of things that I was settling for.
Why?
There was a
security.
Yeah, I think comfort. What I thought was comfort. What I thought was comfortable. But really, I'm learning more too about what that means.
Yeah.
What comfort actually means.
Yeah.
And I'm learning about like how comfort is to strengthen, and like it comes from the root, like that fort is in there, like to fortify.
Oh, really? I never thought about that. So it's with fortification.
With fortification.
Yes. Yes.
And that one of the definition, like if you look it up in the dictionary.
This goes, well, no, I just heard Jordan Peterson talk about this. This goes biblical too, because there's
Oh, really?
It connects. Yeah, but keep going. I'll try to find the reference for that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And that the other piece is to cheer and to console, or like the other piece of comfort. And because
that's what one does. Like that's how that works. Right.
Yeah,
like that's how
if
you're on a team going to results, it's like that. You like cheer each other on. And like when it doesn't work out, like you figure it out and then you do it again. And like that's this pulsation, sponder.
Yeah. And I'm learning like as a parent that's huge as a foundational, like what I can offer Miles as he grows is those pieces to cheer him on and to console him.
Yeah.
Helps to strengthen him, right? And it's that sort of support.
So Sarah Blakely's known for talking about this. She's the one who grows Spanx. She's the gal who grew Spanx.
Yeah.
And she's like, her dad would be like, basically like, how did you fail today? That was the question. And it was like that, like just to be able to cheer on from that place of this is how we learn.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that with detox too, because this is something that I found over time. And I know I was complaining before about, having to lead this thing twice a year for 20 years. Community was like, you have to keep doing it. I was like, really? Why don't you guys just want to do it? And you're like, no, you got to do it. And I was like, oh, it's so good for me. Cause like, there's some part that doesn't, what I don't even know what to call modern culture. We're just going to call it modern culture. We'll just put it at that. And I feel like that's generous. I don't even know why. Because I like the word modern more than I like the description of what's going on in modern culture. I think we should be so much smarter. I think the filler creates fear. That people don't understand that, but like too much filler in your mind, too much filler in your body, you're going to create fear. And the reason you're creating fear is because the body, like it cannot digest what's coming in. That's an unsustainable pattern. It goes towards accelerated aging, which means sooner death. And the body's smarter than that. So it's like trying to sound an alarm bell. But the problem with that is it's often not that effective.
Right.
And then like increases like, so then the whole pattern just keeps going in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I think with the Zen, as I'm writing in this, there's even a streamlined way of communicating that I'm experiencing. And part of that was figuring out a whole bunch of different technologies.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Sounds True publishing, Tammy Simon, second mention, had me write, like they wanted me to write in Word, and I wrote my first book in Scrivener, and Scrivener was a by far sophisticated way to write a elegant, non-complicated, more understanding that there's a level of complication to writing a book and building in a way of organizing that complication with simplicity and elegance and fast loading times and no crashing times and things like that, that like, if you're trying to concentrate, right?
Seems important. You're writing a book.
So then I figured out the illustrator part. So I'm like, I'm cartooning my way through this. I don't think you've seen any of my cartoons. They're just my illustrations. So I'm taking because the way that I teach is with a whiteboard essentially, and I draw things out as I'm talking, and it's a really effective way to learn. It's an effective way to stay engaged. It's an effective way to share a common picture so that two people can communicate about the same thing, or a whole group can get a concept and share that shared concept on a visual plane, which seems to really affect understanding. Like that's much more so an indicator than people listening to the same thing is people understanding the same image.
Yeah.
And so trying to break the concepts down of what's going on. So I started drawing these cells. You guys will see, who are on the newsletter at Yoga Healer, you'll see them. And if you want to get on and you're not on, you can follow a link somewhere and find that. Is walking people through that. This is what's going, like, this is what it's like when your cells have too much in your mind and too much in your body, right? Because how does the body then intersect with, where does the mind intersect with the body? Like, how does that look when you draw that out in little cartoon pictures, right? And it gets fascinating to start, because then what I'm trying to do is help people feel that you can feel this. Like you can feel, talk about that before we wrap. Like, what does it feel like cellularly now? Like when you think back to what you felt like, because you weren't new to detox either, and you weren't new to yoga or wellness or anything. Like you knew so much. You had like to the degree that you've studied meditation and practiced, and the degree of which like the sophistication of your practices was very high.
Mm-hmm. What is it you want me to talk about?
That
The sophistication.
Like there was some shift where you knew this stuff. And this is the hockey stick part to me, is like you're going along and you're doing all the things. And there's some patterns are so fierce and ancestral or whatever, or they're just fierce and deep and from who the heck knows, trauma. Usually it's always trauma. It's usually always trauma. It's always trauma. It's always trauma. Right. And then there's some of those that are so deep that like, you don't get, like, it doesn't get through, but all the even the accumulation of detoxing over time of doing any of these I'm calling them positive stressors, things that are like, really good. You have to do them for your long-term, and like, you don't really like them in the short term, positive stressor. And so something cracked the nut, and now you feel remarkably different. And part of what I'm wondering is how it feels in your body, like the ama or the undigested stuff. That's the word we use for it. To not having 30 pounds is a lot of, if you think in terms of like my mom would joke about like bags of sugar. He'd be like, that's a 5 pound of sugar. Like carrying out 5 pounds of
bowling
sugar.
balls. Yeah. I think ultimately, like the ways in which it's shifted for me is this, like, there is less fear around having a lot of the harder conversations. I was dancing around a lot of harder conversations. And I think that it started to sort of break open in terms of expression, like through the channels of my own expression of myself.
And that ties into the event last year. Like something happened like there. We did a lot of practice. We did a lot of doing that. We did a lot of stuff that opens things really fast. Yeah. That speaks to velocity of relationship again. It's like, bam, it's like these elite community, and elite, by the time elite, I don't mean like, what do I mean by that? I mean like has excelled in a direction. I don't know, whatever you want to call that. Elite was a really easy name for me. Like, yeah, there's that. People don't like elitism for whatever reason. But we'll just say like they're really good. And because they're good, it's when they talk to each other, it goes exponential.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's so few of them that are good in that direction. And then that feeds on itself. That's a positive loop, right? And then it's got this and so that those are evolutionary communities. So it's that elite evolutionary communities, right? And so we're seeing like more and more of those where you're all of a sudden getting like, oh, all of a sudden, bam, things start to happen really fast.
Yeah. And major pieces of the ways in which I was recognizing that I hadn't ultimately given myself permission to do what was best for me. I was constantly putting other people in front of me.
And you couldn't see it. Or you like when
or if I would see it, then I would kind of like dance, do a little dance around it, like kind of look at it or poke at it, right? Over the years.
Like getting familiar.
And I think that there was a kind of capacity that I was prepared. I was now ready. I mean, I've asked myself this question, like, how come this didn't happen 10 years ago, or what took so long? And then recognizing like it just took the amount of time it needed.
Yeah. Like that's that's interesting. So but it's interesting on a few levels, right? Because that's part of the thing. That's part of the thing. Because when I look at my path with this stuff, with Alma and with these patterns, because I'm experiencing things I've never experienced before in my body, and I'm 47 and turning 48 in a week. Yeah, a week. I'm like, this seems to like just be getting like really good. Like the machinery, like it took me a while to figure out that like the design's perfect and how to live in the perfect design. And I'm not even there yet. Like, I mean, I've made just insane leaps and bounds. I pointed my attention to that in the last 2 years. I don't have a functional ACL in my left leg, and that's been quite a journey. And it was borderline that I could heal it, but I'm way too active. And so I kept re-injuring it. And now it's like, oh yeah, that's exactly. But the in that path, in that journey of trying to stay off a leg, like really like reintegrate a ligament. Yeah. That's like dominant in all the sports that I do. I mean, but it's also like you use it in walking. It's helpful for walking and standing. It's a stabilizer. So I might have like a stabilizer on the line of my left leg, and I'm getting all of this incredible body work that's opening up my breath body. And if I hadn't detoxed, if I didn't like have a pattern of detox, like there's just no level of access to the tissue in the human body. So the degree to which, what I want to speak to is just the degree to which the human body is organized when there's not filler, like when there's not filler, and you can't get rid of the filler without fasting. And understanding what fasting rhythms are, and like really feeling yours, and making friends with hunger and fasting and the joy of that. That's like exquisite, but different. It's just really quite different than the cheap thrills of overeating, I guess.
Right.
Or eating inappropriately. Or yeah.
I mean, it makes me think it was a year ago, you and I went to the Joe Dispenza.
Oh yeah.
Right. So that was also sort of,
I did the Master You book release.
Formula, the Master
I was just thinking about,
Totally.
It
was that was all part of like what happened a year ago.
So that's also velocity of relationship, because this is what happens is there's a level when it starts to happen where you start to be around people that are a lot more growth oriented and grounded in that, and just have less filler. Like they're just, and there's It's kind of what Clubhouse is about. If you haven't been invited to Clubhouse yet, you'll probably hear about it again this week or today. And be like, what the fuck are they talking about? And if you're hearing this like a year later, you're like, they're so dated. They said Clubhouse. Huh? Right. It's like when you find a bunch of people really going in a direction that you're trying to find out more about, if they have momentum, this is as far as I can tell. Because I've been talking about it for a few years in yoga health coaching and the business model side of things for the wellness process. It's like if you're stepping on if a bus slows down but doesn't stop when it picks you up, and there's already a cool crowd in there having a good conversation, and you're heading in the right direction, like you've got momentum. Mm-hmm. That is not random. Mm-hmm. And if a group has that, knows how to do that, and knows how to manage their momentum. Mm-hmm. Right? So momentum management. Just a new industry. Right. So really though, it's a thing. If you think about it, mm-hmm. if it's once you have everything you want, what you want is better relationships, and you want to be with people. Because if basically people are like cells, right? In your body, if all the people are being exactly themselves, like everything works great.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'm pretty stoked to guide in a way that is so step by step and day by day, and so basic. So we're really starting off with some hot water, and then more water, less food, then more fat, less filler, and then more walking, and then more. It's interesting. Like people aren't like, how do I stop doing a bad habit? And it's like, well, you don't. You just like start doing better ones, and they have their own intelligence. And that's what you were talking about with going downstream. Like you start to get into a different flow. Mm-hmm. To me, that I think in 20 years, that was what we wanted to talk about. What have I learned in 20 years of leading the Yogi Detox as yoga healer? What a moniker I chose, huh? Heavy shit. How have I lived up to it? What's your take on it?
What's what?
What's your take on it?
On Yogi Detox?
Well, on 20 years as yoga healer and the moniker.
I mean, I've been around 10, 11 of the 20. I mean, I met you earlier on, but I didn't actually, I don't think you become part of the community until then.
You don't even look like the same person. Can we put like before after pictures on this? When people are like, you look 20 years younger than when I met you, I feel like that's true. I really just got a hit of that. Like you let go of that was a lot of, like you were carrying a lot of baggage, like whether it was your baggage or your mother's I don't know whose baggage, but like, you don't have that. And so that's what I wanted to, okay, in closing, that's what I wanted to speak to is like time matters.
Yeah.
Like when I look back on my life, I'm like, I really wish I could have never not known this, but like if I had to learn it, then I could have learned it like pretty early on, like really early on in the game of life. Because like once you learn it, it has its own momentum and it self-maintains. It's not like habits. Once you look at it as habits, it's not like things, it's not like it's always hard. It's just the beginning of the hockey stick hard.
Yeah.
Right. And so in that process, it's annoying, but like, you know what? It takes a long time. As deep as you're in, that's how long there was unconsciousness or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So like, that's just the way nature works. Cause and effect. Sorry. Yeah. But velocity of relationship accelerates that part of the hockey stick. Mm-hmm. So the flat stuff doesn't take so long before you get that fast growth. That's the moving bus. Right? Is that?
It's a good bus. A lot of momentum here.
So fun to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. I hope it was helpful.